Good morning, this is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Friday, July 9th, 2021. The main fire potential impacts for the next couple of days are shown here. With today, we're looking at some wind, especially over eastern Idaho, western Wyoming, and northeast Utah, and then a few isolated thunderstorms moving up into far western Nevada and then across the southern portions of the Great Basin. These will be isolated today, but and on the dry side. On Saturday, we really start to see some heat building in. It's already been hot, but it's going to get a little bit hotter. Near record temperatures in place for the weekend across much of the geographic area. We do have some wind in southeast Utah on Saturday, and then some wind to the Sierra Front on Sunday. We'll continue to see very limited moisture move up for Saturday to Sunday in central Nevada. Past 24 hours shown here, just a few isolated thunderstorms mainly over eastern Utah and one little thunderstorm cluster there in Nevada. Great Basin fire activity shown here. Fire activity is picking up in Idaho with some of that lightning that moved through and then the gustier winds and hot temperatures up there. That's where we're kind of seeing that initial attack picking up today. Observed precipitation shown for the past 14 days on the left and past 7 days on the right. We can see a couple of weeks ago we were getting some of that deeper monsoonal moisture up into Utah, and the past week has really dried out with the hot and drier conditions having moved in. With this hot and dry weather, the ERCs have been on an upward trend pretty much everywhere, but particularly Utah and up into Idaho. Those values are above the 80th to 90th percentile, and we're seeing some of these purples return to Utah. That's that 97th percentile and above. So these values are just going to continue to increase over the next few days with the hot and dry weather continuing before we see any kind of return of some southerly moisture and cloud cover. So a closer look at the trend lines for the ERCs over the San Marcos National Forest here. Values are right up near the historical records for the time of year. And over northwest Utah, we had a pretty good dip with some of that precip that came through, but those values have been increasing steadily since then, and they're back up to above normal and sitting pretty close to those historic records once again. The satellite image from this morning showing that high pressure centered right over the southern Great Basin, really keeping temperatures very high, near records down south. High temperatures in the St. George area will be 114 around 114 for the next couple of days. So very, very hot. Again, for this afternoon, we can see the high pressure in place across the Great Basin and dry conditions area-wide. Just a little bit of moisture getting up under that ridge for some very isolated thunderstorms there in far western Nevada and possibly southern Utah as well. We do have high risk for wind over eastern Idaho, western Wyoming, and northeast Utah today. So a closer look at where that thunderstorm potential is right along the Sierra Front, far southern Nevada, and then the higher elevations of southern Utah could see those thunderstorms for this afternoon. And again, the wind speeds up to the 25, 30 mile an hour range for eastern Idaho and into eastern Utah. On Saturday, more of the same. No high risk triggers issued for tomorrow. Very hot, very dry, a few little isolated thunderstorms possible over Nevada. Temperatures tomorrow continuing to be very high, 115 near Vegas, 103 in Boise, and some continued gusty winds over central Utah, but just slightly below perhaps that red flag warning criteria. And Sunday, the trend continues, very hot, very dry, no high risk issued across the geographic area. Minimum relative humidities are very low in the single digits for most of the southern Great Basin and the low teens elsewhere. On Sunday, we may begin to see a little bit more moisture moving up into western and central Nevada for some isolated thunderstorm activity there. The 3-day precip totals really showing that drying trend, showing the potential for just a little bit of moisture to come up and around that ridge into far western and central Nevada over the next couple of days. As we move into next week, the ridge remains in place. I think Monday is going to be the hottest day of the period with near record temperatures everywhere. And we'll begin to see some moisture returning from the south For an increase in thunderstorm activity, we do have high risk triggers issue for that thunderstorm, that thunderstorm activity. These will likely be a mix of wet and dry, but after such a prolonged period of hot and dry conditions, we're definitely concerned about no initial attack down there. And then on Tuesday, the moisture continues to work northward, so we're really just highlighting that northern fringe of that moisture for the risk of the more dry type thunderstorms as that moisture moves northward. So that's Tuesday. On Wednesday, it looks like the thunderstorm activity remains in the general area there across southern Utah and southern Nevada, not moving very much further northward. And more of the same on Thursday. We'll definitely be watching this moisture. The models, it being almost a week out, we're still not exactly sure how far north that moisture will go into Utah and Nevada for the thunderstorm activity. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, how widespread that moisture and thunderstorm activity becomes by the second half of next week. The 7-day precipitation totals on this forecast are showing some pretty decent amounts anyway for the higher elevations of southern Utah, up to 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of precipitation with some of those storms. So we'll be keeping an eye on this just to see over the next couple of days how that forecast shapes up, but definitely a return of some southerly moisture to Utah just in the nick of time as our ERCs and fire danger values really start to increase again. Not much in the way of precip over Nevada, northern Nevada especially, and Idaho, however, during the next week. The extended forecast through July 16th through the 22nd puts the bullseye of heat a little bit to our north and east, thank goodness. So it's still going to be hot, but maybe not record setting. But it's still looking for that dry trend across much of the Great Basin. We'll see if we get some of this moisture up into the southern Great Basin from that returning monsoon. This concludes today's fire potential briefing. Please check back tomorrow for the latest updates.